You're listening to The Dating Den with dating and relationship badass and best-selling author Marni Batista. Every week, you'll get the raw truth from top experts and real people on the important dating, sex, and relationship issues you want to know about. So if you're ready for true talk that's authentic and unfiltered, and you're not afraid to be called out on your stuff, then you're ready for what's next.
The Dating Den, episode 56 with Dr. Meg Haworth. The mind-body connection. How trauma is connected to chronic illness and, wait for it, your dating life. Ladies, welcome back to the Den of Dating, aka the Dating Den. We are super lucky today because we are going to talk about some serious shit, and I think it's a really important topic. And I think that it's something that we all need to just really handle with dignity and grace. And I can't think of a better person to help you do that than a really cool woman named Dr. Meg Haworth. So I'm going to tell you all about her in a second. But I just want to say, first of all, thank you for coming to the Dating Den and for being a source of light for women. So I really appreciate you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. This is really exciting. I love these conversations.
Me too. And let me tell everyone what we're going to talk about. So Dr. Meg is a survivor of sexual abuse, drowning, being struck by lightning. And she healed over a dozen illnesses, including fibromyalgia. And so she absolutely knows what it takes to overcome, I would say, life's biggest challenges. And what's really cool is now that she's helping thousands and thousands of other women do the same thing. And she's been doing it for, 20 years. She's the founder of Lightning Women, Overcoming the Wounds of Sexual, Physical, and Emotional Abuse, which is a really fabulous movement for women who suffered abuse as children and now have chronic illness. And this link has actually been confirmed by science through the ACE study quiz, which is if you've never done that, I want to talk about that because that's a pretty amazing piece of work. Okay. And Dr. Meg has been featured on NBC Nightly News, the LA Times, HuffPo, and she offers really cool wellness solutions from food plans with her whole person integration technique. She's got books and cooking and personal development, like two of my most favorite things. She's got a podcast series on iTunes. She's got online programs. She does wellness coaching. She does private work. And I think, like I said, this topic of abuse is a really huge topic. So let's start with there. So you told in your bio, wow, like you've literally been through a lot.
Yeah.
So how did you get into this work then of translating that into helping women with abuse in their history, heal with chronic illness that shows up?
I came to it honestly through my own experience and through my own healing journey as I began to heal myself from, at first I just, like most people, I thought that my diseases were, which in my 20s, I had over a dozen at that point, with mostly digestive things from ulcers and irritable bowel syndrome and migraines and depression and PTSD and all of that. So I thought it was food. So I just, eliminated all the foods that were potentially dangerous to my health that helped me heal. And I started to get so much better very quickly. But it took a while to figure out that could only take me so far. And that's, as I found transpersonal psychology and started to do the deep inner work that was required, it was really the emotions and where they were stuck in my body and what they were thinking and feeling, and the child part of me that was all alone and still in the trauma, which I think is something that people really need to hear. There's a piece of you that's still in that trauma if you haven't released that yet. So at any rate, just, going through all of those experiences is what got me into helping other people get through them too.
Well, what was that like? I'm just curious. So here you're like, you have this illness and you feel like you're making all these sacrifices, right? You're cleaning up the way you're eating. You're maybe even like meditating or, you're doing all these things, right? And I think for a lot of my listeners, they're like, I've checked the boxes. I've done it all, you know?
Yeah.
And then you're still left with that one thing, that one secret, or that one thing that maybe isn't a secret, but you feel like you've done the work in therapy or whatever. What was that like for you to have worked so hard and made this progress and still feel like you weren't getting the outcomes that you wanted?
It was really tough. It's very frustrating when you're not getting to where you hope you could get to. And I know I hear this from people all the time, how frustrating and difficult it is. But I think the big thing was, because I was in all kinds of therapy, I was meditating, yoga, all of those things that you mentioned, and so much more. I was taking all kinds of workshops and retreats and, you know, all kinds of things to get better. But it wasn't until I engaged in transpersonal psychology, which is really, it's focused on your energy system and healing by way of your energy system, also known as your spirit, your soul. There's different ways to think about this based on your own understanding of that higher part of you, that loving part of you, that I think it's really difficult to access when we're in that space of being sick all the time, and we're really just spinning in all of the emotional stuff. And I think that was the thing with traditional psychology, which I began to study in college originally, is that it focused on the mental and emotional and really keeping you in your story. And as long as you stay in that space, you kind of stay slave to it in a way. And especially to the unconscious parts of the story, which those secrets, I think, are held in the emotions. The emotions have their own beliefs, their thoughts, their feelings, and then they get stuck in different parts of the body, and they're spinning, and they're wanting the very same thing that you want. They want to be seen, heard, understood, and loved.
That's powerful. So do you mind kind of backtracking a little bit? Because you said something that is just right up my alley. And you said there's that piece of you, that emotion, that child, or the part of you that was traumatized that still has this like need. And I think we spend so much time like coping, rationalizing, covering up. We're ashamed of that message. We do. I mean, my clients are really good at like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Why is it, you know, like, get over it, you know, like, I need to get over it. And so why is that? Why can we not just get over it? And then what is that piece that we need to really just kind of make friends with, that we got to deal with it?
Yeah, I think the reason we can't get over it is because we haven't gone down into it. And I can, you know, feel people going, but I'm in therapy all the time. I've done this work and I've done that work, and I can like just feel their energy. People get their hackles going up. But it's going into it not with the mental mind, because the mental mind is not the thing that does the healing ultimately. The mental mind will keep it stuck. So it's really going into it with the most loving part of you, that energy, that spirit, that spiritual part of you is the thing that actually brings healing to the child that's in there struggling. She's still stuck in the trauma. So there's certain processes I do with people to help basically bring that child back into the body, you know, because during the experience of being sexually abused as a child, you experience something that we call in transpersonal psychology psychic shock. So it's like your psyche, which is, the word psyche means of the soul, gets shocked out of you, and you become dissociative. So that's how they describe it in traditional psychology is you become dissociative. So you're not associating with your physical reality because you're disconnected from it. So part of the processes I do with people help people get back into their bodies so they're not feeling so disconnected from their experience, and helps bring the love that child wanted in the first place. And it gets very shattered. The sexual part of you is, it's almost like we're aware from when we come into this world or before that, the sexual part of you it's connected to life, like life-giving force. It's ultimately, I think it's a sacred part of us. And we know this on a very instinctual level. And when that gets violated in a way where somebody of authority who's supposed to be taking care of us is violating us in that manner, it's a deep trauma. So, and there are many different ways that clients will compartmentalize that trauma, but the child self is always a piece of what will release you from it.
That's amazing, because I love you said, I've got some statistics, and you said that 1 in 3 women were sexually abused as children. And I see women that come into my work and they're like, yeah, I have a dating problem. And then we get into it and they're like, there's this experience, this trauma that happened to them. And they don't realize it, but it's affecting their ability to date, their ability to create connection, to have intimacy. It's the reason why they attract men who are emotionally unavailable, right? Like, it's a perfect, like when you trace it back, it's like, of course, right? But how does that history? So if you have this experience and you may not be aware that it is impacting your ability to have intimate, healthy, romantic relationships, what happens? How does it take you away from that goal?
It can, and very, I think, because so much of it is unconscious, and as that, what's unconscious is brought to the conscious, and you're able to recognize and release those parts of the self that are in there really holding you back from bringing in the kind of relationship that you want. So I think that's important. But the other theme that I'm thinking of right now too is that there's I think that a lot of women who were sexually abused as children, we try to push the man away in a sort of instinctual way. So we kind of go for those men that aren't available to us because we're really afraid to go deep and into love, and really deep into intimacy, because it's scary for us. So there's that. I've seen that theme over and over again, is keep love out, keep love away. It's like, I want it, but when it comes to me, I don't really know what to do with it. And so it can be a very confusing, it can create a very confusing reality for the person who's going through it.
And let me ask you this, because you and I spoke about this a little bit, but so when you're in the process of healing from this, you had said, there is no magic moment, right? Where you're like, great, I'm done. I've graduated. And, whoever is your caregiver or provider, right? Whether you read the most awesome book online or you're working with Dr. Meg or whatever, it's not like you get a certificate of completion and you're like, now you can go have the intimate, healthy relationship. Now you're able to. So what happens and why do people get stuck when, they're like, well, you got to deal with this first? I mean, it almost keeps them safe and stuck.
Yeah. Well, I think relationship is one of the most beautiful places in life to be able to transcend those parts of the self that are fractured and hurting. And that it's because that person, as we know, the man in front of us is showing up as a mirror for us, and reflecting back to us what we need to work on. And I think we get so bogged down in all of that. I don't believe that there's a magic moment where you go, ta-da, I'm ready. Here's your seal of approval, because I think that, first of all, puts a ton of pressure on the person who was sexually abused. One of the things I like to say to my clients, and I've said to men that I've dated, is I don't want you to treat me with kid gloves. Because that's giving me the message that I'm damaged goods and there's something wrong with me. Yeah. I need you to treat me with respect. And a lot of that is defining what respect means, just like the song, right? What it means to me, right? Defining what that is, and for yourself, and then sticking to the rules that you create for yourself around what that means. That for me means, one of the things it means for me, just one of them, is when I'm out on a date with a man and he's leering at other women. I'm not going to go out with him again.
Right.
Like, I mean, most women I think wouldn't, but I think one of the things that happens with people, those sexual abuse survivors, is that power to say no wasn't even a part of the equation in our very first sexual experience that was forced upon us. So learning to say no as an adult can actually be a pretty complicated thing. You would think it would be easier for the adult who's been through that trauma, but it's actually often harder. It's because we're often in that space of trying to please the man. His desire is more important than my desire, because we were always in that one down position, more than one. Being in that victimized place. So I think as a woman who's been through sexual abuse is to start to define what you need for you, because it's ultimately your relationship with yourself that helps you get the relationship you want with somebody else.
And it's funny. People always ask me, like, what does dignity mean, right? How do you know if you're dated with dignity? And I always say, well, your dignity is 100% defined by you, right? So,
yes.
Right. So if you're on a date and there's a guy who's inappropriately leering at other women or whatever it is, or freaking looking at his phone the whole time.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Like, it's
right.
right. So what allows me to date with dignity is to say that's not okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
And it's totally individual. I always say there's, tools, not rules. Right. So like having some understanding of what allows you to stay in your dignity and having boundaries, right, are huge. Yeah. So what kind of sexual boundaries can women set, right? Is they're getting to know the man while staying in their femininity and being flirtatious and being, being in that space of open welcome.
Yeah. So it's really making up rules for yourself, and what your non-negotiables are, which we talk about that a lot in the dating world, but your sexual non-negotiables, and if you become aware of, wow, I've really allowed men to just kind of do whatever they wanted to do because I never made this connection before. Okay, so, well, I don't want men who, first of all, I want a healthy man, and healthy men aren't going to leer at other women when you're on a date. They're not going to be texting their late night booty call because they know they're not going to go to bed with you. While they're on the date with you, there's a number of things, they're going to ask you questions about you and actually listen for the answers. I think that's a huge thing that sexual abuse survivors I've seen over and over again is we often become so empathetic that we attract narcissistic personality types. So we have to be very, very careful about is that man interested in me, like in who I am, what I do, and what I'm about. Like things like that are very, very important. So anyway, there's a lot of the boundaries that you set are going to be with your energy, which is with the way you hold yourself, the way you carry yourself through the date. I love that you call it dating with dignity, because I think it's especially I've seen this more with the newer generations coming up, that dignity in so many ways is lost. I think women are, more confused than ever about what's okay and what's not okay, and what to do on a date, what not to do on a date. It's just, and I think that when you access these qualities of dignity and respect and self-care and self-love and all of those things, and it begins to make this inner conversation that goes on inside of you when you're on your date, it begins to make it easier, because now you're setting up your yeses and your nos. Particularly your no's, your ability to say, no, you know what, it doesn't feel right to me. Like if a guy's very sexually pushy, and that can really trigger an abuse survivor. And that may not be the kind of guy you want to be with. You may need to be with somebody who's more respectful and reserved. So it's defining all those different things. There's a lot of different layers, I think, that we can cycle through and look through as we're really being thoughtful about how we're going to show up on a date,
Absolutely. And to do it, what I hear you saying also is like, look, we always invite our community to come up with those non-negotiables. And if this is you, like, come up with those sexual non-negotiables, like now, like in the, when you're sitting there having tea alone, on a Sunday morning, not when you're like, oh my God, he's so hot. Like, will he like me? Right. Where you can get triggered. Right. And have that agreement with yourself, and practice, I always say to women, like, they're like, oh, these guys online that are like texting me and wanting me to send like, boob shots. And I'm like, you know what? It's awesome because you get to practice saying no, 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 thank you. No, thank you. Right. It doesn't mean there's all losers online. It means that, there are humans and there are plenty of women who are going to send a picture of their boobs. So, that's what those guys are up to. But for a woman who's like, wow, what great, you get to practice saying no over and over again without making meaning of it, knowing who you want and who you don't want. So that when you're on a date, you're like, yeah, no.
Yeah.
I like you, but that's not how I roll. I don't know you that well yet.
Right. And that's key right there is I do not know you. I've been on 1 or 2 dates with you. You don't know how he treats, you watch how he treats the server. You don't know how he treats his friends. You don't even know if he has friends, which is always a red flag.
Right. Totally. And what I think is really important to hear from those who've been through sexual abuse as a child, guess what? Women who haven't still need to say no. So my message is, see, you're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you, right? We all get to do that, and we're all invited to do that, whether you've been abused or not. So it's your right and privilege of dating is to say who can and can't touch the tatas, okay?
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, so I want to talk about chronic illness because I know this is your like very special jam. And have you heard of this movie Heal that came out, this documentary?
I have heard of it. I have not yet seen it.
Well, first of all, you should have been in it. But besides that, they're really talking about this mind-body connection and how when these traumas are stored in our body, they manifest in chronic illness. And so I was just like, wow, that's mind-blowing to me. So how are those two things linked? And why is it important for women to really understand this in a profound way?
Yeah, this is really critical, and the sooner you can understand this, the better for you. They found through the ACE study, Adverse Childhood Experience study, that was done in San Diego in 94, 95. It's over a 15-year period, really. 77,000 people. It's the largest public health study ever done that nobody knows about. They linked for sure that there is a link between the chronic illness and childhood abuse. It's abuse and family dysfunction as well. So, things like a divorce or abandonment, this can deeply affect you. Now, if you grow up in an abusive home and every day your abuser's there and you're just sort of waiting for the other shoe to fall because eventually something's going to happen. I mean, this can go for people that grew up in homes where the parents were just full of rage. They were always raging at the kids, they were always raging at each other. There's all these different scenarios that can create this problem. But when you're a kid and you're going through that, you are in fight, flight, or freeze mode pretty much all the time. You're always worried about what's going to happen next. You're always worried. This is where the people pleaser starts to get developed because you're always worried about, am I going to set my mom or my dad off? You're walking on eggshells. And so when that happens, you're secreting hormones in the body. The two main ones are adrenaline and cortisol, and you're secreting them over and over and over again until those hormones eventually become toxic to the body. So usually for me, I became toxic by the time I was in my 20s. And so I ended up with all this, and there were a number of other issues, with just a lot of antibiotics because I was sick all the time as a kid too. I wasn't breastfed. There were, all these things that contributed to that. But these things might kind of make lights go on for some of your listeners. So as you get older, the body becomes weaker and weaker. The immune system becomes weak. And so you don't process things as easily. Now, in the study of psychoneuroimmunology, which is the study of mind-body medicine, it's a whole big field of science. They found that certain emotions, that any emotion that you have floods every cell of your body with that particular emotion. If you are holding on to shame from holding on to a secret that, one of your parents abused you, for instance, and you don't want anyone to know because you're afraid of what's going to happen and no one's going to believe you, all of the different layers that go on with that. Holding on to emotions like that, shame is the densest emotion I've ever worked with and seen with clients, and it's across the board. Sexual abuse survivors hold it. Shame, fear, those things are long-held resentments, because you can become a very resentful person having grown up with that kind of abuse in the home. Those are often associated with cancer and autoimmune diseases. And they've made this link scientifically. So, and I've seen it in my work with my clients. So what I do with them is I do an entire holistic plan where I look at the food, I look at the environment, and we eliminate as many of the toxins as we possibly can in the food and in the environment, which helps the immune system to start to be able to kickstart. It helps your biology. It supports it while you're going through all of the difficult, deeper inner work and mindset shifts, because a lot of it's mindset shifting, where you're adopting a new and different belief system, which is really critical, because if you hang out in that old belief system, things like, why bother? This isn't going to work for me. Those kinds of things, it makes it harder for you to actually heal.
Absolutely. And I think what I really thought when I really dove into this in this documentary, and what you're saying is that it's almost like, I can't believe this is like a aha, right? And like, it's just come, because it's like clear, you've got cortisol and adrenaline, all these things literally coursing through your body, right? Yep. Like it's going into your entire body. It's impacting everything. Of course, your body is going to break under pressure, right? Yep. From that. Yeah. So I think that what's really opportunistic about that is now we can say, wait, I can clean it up. I can clean up the food. I can clean up the environment as much as I can, and I can work on my brain, right? On my mindset. So now there's like a way out.
Yeah, exactly. And then more importantly than all of that is really working on the deep inner work and bringing the spiritual to heal the mental, emotional, and physical. So it's engaging that piece. It wasn't until I engaged that piece that I started to truly heal in a lasting way.
I love that. So, because you're looking at like, someone's like, okay, look, you don't need a Band-Aid, right? You need surgery, right? And we keep trying to Band-Aid it, Band-Aid our way through, because we don't want to deal, right? And it's like, fine, I'll change my food. Fine, I'll do, and then it's like, go to where that original place is and heal that. So you have a technique actually that helps heal some of these underlying unconscious emotions that are getting stuck in the body. So do you mind sharing that technique with us?
Yeah, not at all. It's called whole person integration technique. And what we do is we work directly with the emotion, where it's stuck in the body. We ask it very specific questions and then some to help you understand this part of the self. Over doing this for many years, I started I stopped thinking of these emotions like, shame, pain, sorrow, hopelessness, helplessness. I stopped thinking of them as negative emotions, and I started thinking of them as teaching emotions, because I began to understand that they were here to teach us about who we really are. And they want, as I said earlier, they want the same thing that you want. They want to be seen, heard, understood, and loved. And that's what this technique does, is it brings all of those pieces and parts to the emotion and helps you understand it so that you can say, you know what? I get why you're here. I don't need you anymore. Thank you so much for being here. You bring that love of that most loving part of you to it, and then you pull it out of your body. And what is so cool is that every single time I've done this technique with somebody after they've released that emotion, I'll say, okay, so check back in with your stomach, and they'll say, oh my gosh, I feel lighter, that tightness is gone, that pain is gone, whatever it is. And then we fill that space with a quality that you want to fill it with, because now you've got energy, you've got an energy space available to you. So it's like a computer hard drive, right? You've released an app, and now you can put another cooler, more interesting app into your system, that you're going to want to use more. And so you bring that, like joy and excitement and confidence. Confidence is a big one, especially when it comes to dating. I think that's a huge piece of the dating puzzle is the confidence to be able to say, no, not doing that, because the more that you do say no to the things that you absolutely do not want and don't want to tolerate any longer, then it's magical, but a more healed guy, a more healthy man will come towards you each time you do that. So because you've released these things from the energy system that have allowed you to attract the things in that you desire to have. So, you're hearing the layers of the law of attraction that I'm talking about in here, just a simple way to kind of understand that is a tuning fork. So if you put tuning forks in a room and you hit the note C, only the C's are going to vibrate in the room.
Right.
All the other tuning forks are going to, so, you want to up level your energy field.
I love that. And I think one thing I want to highlight what you're saying is that, all of those other modalities that people do to quote unquote get better, right? They get you to wherever it is that you are. And that's awesome. Because as my clients used to say, I'm like definitely not as fucked up as I used to be, right? Like after that divorce or after that big breakup or since that, whatever happened. But the bottom line is what you're saying is there's this little piece, there's this energy piece, right? That's lodged in there and you can't magically delicious it away.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And I always say too that your energy system is the only thing you're going to take with you when you leave this planet. So it's the most important thing to evolve and work with, and it's the thing that changes the biology. And it's a really cool thing when you watch this happen in your own body doing this kind of work.
Wow, it's amazing. So you have an opportunity for some of our listeners to kind of get some support with their abuse history and their wellness. That's really very holistic, which I happen to love. Yay! And so, it's the only way to go, yo.
Exactly.
So for those of you that this is really resonating with, I absolutely implore you, encourage you, invite you to go into the show notes because Dr. Meg has some really cool, awesome resources that are available to you. Because, like if you coulda, woulda magically delicioused it already, ladies, you would have, because you do it in every other part of your life. And I think that, and I just feel so strongly that what you said is like, look, it doesn't mean you're bad, you're broken, you don't get to have love, right?
Right, exactly.
It's like what you said, pain, suffering. It's like a window. It's going, hello, hi, can you take care of me, please? Right? And so it's not like you're fucked up. It means like there's like a red button flashing. And if your car said put air in the tires, you wouldn't be like, you stupid car. You'd be like, oh, the light's blinking. Like, where do I go to to put air in the tire? Do I need a new tire? Do I need to pump the tire? That's all you're doing. So go find Dr. Meg and put some air in your emotional tires or get a new tire if that's what you need.
Great way to put it. I love it.
Well, I'm super happy that you're able to be here. I just feel like people that do the work that you do are little angels upon the world that make like spirit work tangible for humans in the flesh on this planet in this form. So bless you and thank you for being here. And ladies, don't forget when you're out there, date with some damn dignity. All right, we'll talk to you on the next show. Bye-bye.